3 days ago, I sat in my own living room and watched my daughter-in-law, Monica, slide a thick envelope across my kitchen table like she was closing a real estate deal. My son, Derek, stood behind her with his arms crossed, not looking at me. And my daughter, Claudia, the one I thought would never let this happen, was sitting in the corner chair, staring at her phone. The envelope said voluntary power of attorney, estate and person on the tab. I didn't pick it up. I just looked at Derek and said, "You want to tell me what this is?" He finally looked at me. His eyes were tired, impatient. "It's just paperwork, Dad. We've talked about this. We hadn't talked about anything." But before I tell you how I ended up in that room and what happened when I didn't sign, let me take you back to where it actually started. 4 days ago, a Tuesday morning in October, in the parking lot of St. Catherine's Medical Center in Columbus, Ohio. I am Harold Bowman. I am 67 years old. I worked 31 years as a structural engineer for the city of Columbus. I designed bridges. I calculated load-bearing tolerances. I spent my career making sure things didn't collapse under pressure. I retired 4 years ago with a pension, a paid-off house, and what I believed was a solid family. I know now that I was only right about 2 of those things. My wife Irene passed 8 years ago. Breast cancer, fast and merciless. After she died, everything I did was for Derek and Claudia. I sold my larger house and bought a smaller one. But I kept the 2 rental properties Irene and I had purchased in the 90s, a duplex in Westerville and a commercial unit on 5th Avenue. Together they generated about $4,000 a month in rental income, clean and steady, every single month. I also had my pension, my savings, and a modest investment account. I was not a wealthy man, but I was a stable one. My son Derek is 40 years old. He works in sales, or he used to. About 2 years ago, he started his own consulting firm. He had a website. He had business cards with a logo. He had lunches with people he called clients. Whether any money changed hands at those lunches, I genuinely couldn't tell you, because every time I asked, Derek got vague and Monica got quiet. Monica is Derek's wife. She is pleasant in the way that a storefront can be pleasant, bright, polished, and entirely empty inside. She has never worked a full-time job in the 12 years they've been married. That was fine when Derek was earning well. It became less fine when he wasn't. My daughter Claudia is 36. She lives 20 minutes from me, teaches 3rd grade, and has a good heart that she unfortunately lets other people make decisions with. It was Claudia who called me that Tuesday morning. She said Derek had been in a car accident on I-270 the night before. "Minor," she said. "He's fine, but he's at St. Catherine's getting his shoulder checked out." Could I come? I was there in 40 minutes. The waiting room smelled like floor wax and burnt coffee. Claudia was sitting with her knees together, her hands in her lap, looking at the door every few seconds. She stood when she saw me and hugged me quickly, the kind of hug that means I'm relieved you're here, and I need to tell you something at the same time. "He's okay," she said immediately. "It's just his collarbone. They're keeping him for observation." "What happened?" She hesitated. "He ran a red light, late at night." Something in the way she said it made me ask, was he drinking? She looked at the door again. They didn't test him, he wasn't cited. I sat down. "Claudia, Dad, he's going through a hard time. Monica's been on him about money. The business isn't." She stopped, pressed her lips together. "Just please be patient with him today, okay? He doesn't need a lecture." I told her I wasn't there to lecture anyone. I was there because my son was in a hospital. Derek's room was at the end of a pale corridor. Monica was already there, perched on the edge of a visitor chair, her phone face down on her knee, her expression one of controlled irritation. She brightened when I walked in, which I now understand was not warmth. It was calculation. "Harold," she said. "Always Harold, never Dad. 12 years and it was still Harold. Thank you for coming. He was asking for you." Derek was propped up in the bed with his right arm in a sling. He looked pale and a little sheepish, which was at least familiar. He had always looked sheepish when he knew he'd done something wrong. "Hey, Dad," he said. I sat down next to him. I asked him how he felt. He said fine, sore, embarrassed. We talked for a few minutes about nothing in particular, and I noticed that Monica kept glancing at him in a way that wasn't about concern. It was about timing. She started talking about 20 minutes in. She called it the situation. She said the business had hit some headwinds. She said they'd had to make some difficult adjustments. She said their cash flow right now was, she paused here, challenged. She needed $60,000 to stabilize things, to bridge the gap. She said they had a plan, a real plan, but they needed this one injection of capital to make it work. I had heard variations of this conversation before. The number was usually smaller. The plan was usually vaguer. Monica, I said, I've given Derek money twice in the last 3 years. Both times it was supposed to be a bridge. I haven't seen a dollar of it repaid. Derek's jaw tightened. Dad, this is different. What's different about it? The amount, the timing. We're not asking for walking around money. We're asking for a real. I'd like to see the business plan, I said. An actual document, projections, what the money gets spent on, line by line. I'd like to see it before we talk numbers. Monica's smile didn't change, but her eyes did. Something shifted behind them. A door closing. Of course, she said. We can get that together. But she didn't mean it. I knew she didn't mean it. In my experience, people who have a real plan don't need to get it together. They have it ready. I left the hospital 2 hours later. Claudia walked me to my car. It was a cold morning, the trees already stripped bare, the parking lot half empty. He's scared, Dad, Claudia said. I know he is. That done. We should write a check I'll never see again. She nodded slowly. I know. She stopped walking. We were at my car. Monica asked me something last week. She asked if I thought you were managing okay, on your own. I looked at her. Managing, she said she'd noticed things. That you repeat yourself sometimes. That you forgot Thanksgiving was at her house last year and showed up at mine. Claudia's voice was careful, like she was reading from something she'd prepared. She said she was worried about you being alone in that house. About the rental properties. Whether you were keeping up with them. I stood there in the cold parking lot and just looked at my daughter's face. She was not lying to me. She genuinely believed what she was saying. She had been told these things, and because she trusted the person who told her, she believed them. I had not forgotten Thanksgiving. Monica had changed the location 2 days before and told Claudia she had told me. She had not told me. I drove home and sat in my kitchen for a long time. The next morning, I got a call from my rental property management company. A woman named Joyce, who handled both properties for me and had for 6 years. She said she had received a letter, sent by certified mail, from a law office called Sheridan and Blount, requesting a full accounting of both properties on behalf of the beneficiaries of the Harold Bowman estate. I said, Joyce, I'm not dead. She said, I know that, Harold. That's why I'm calling you. Sheridan and Blount. I looked them up. Their website was clean, professional, a Columbus law firm. Their specialty listed right there on the About page: probate litigation, conservatorship proceedings, and contested estate management. Conservatorship. The word sat in my stomach like something swallowed wrong. I called my own attorney, a man named Paul Greer, who had handled Irene's estate and my property trusts for 20 years. I told him what Joyce had told me. I told him what Monica had said to Claudia. I told him about the $60,000 request. Paul was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Harold, I need you to do something for me today. Before you do anything else, I need you to log into your brokerage's account and your savings and verify nothing has moved. I did it while he was on the phone. Everything was where I'd left it. Good, he said. Now listen to me carefully. What you're describing, the law firm contacting your property manager on behalf of your beneficiaries, that's not a casual move. That takes preparation. That takes time. Someone has been building something here. The $60,000 wasn't the real ask. That was a test to see how you'd respond. A test. If you'd said yes, they'd know you were still agreeable. If you said no, they'd start laying the groundwork to say you're not competent to manage your own assets. He paused. The law firm. Does Monica have family connections to any attorneys in Columbus? I didn't know, but I knew how to find out. I called Claudia that afternoon. I kept my voice easy, casual. I asked her how Derek was doing after the hospital. She said he was home, resting. I asked if Monica had seemed stressed lately, more than usual. Claudia said yes. She'd been like that for months. I asked, as offhandedly as I could manage, if Monica had mentioned anything about lawyers lately. Claudia went quiet. Dad, why? Just something I heard. Nothing important. Another pause. Then her brother-in-law is an attorney. Evan Blount. He does estate stuff, I think. Dad, what's going on? Evan Blount. Sheridan and Blount. I thanked Claudia and got off the phone and sat with that for a while. Monica's brother-in-law had sent a certified letter to my property manager on behalf of my estate's beneficiaries. Monica had told my daughter that I was forgetting things, that I was struggling alone, that I might not be managing well. And Derek, who needed $60,000 and couldn't explain where it would go, had ended up in a hospital the night before his wife made that ask. It wasn't an accident. None of it was accidental. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay in the dark and thought about Irene. She had always been the one who read people. She had liked Derek, loved him, but she had never fully trusted Monica. She never said it directly. She would just watch her sometimes, at the dinner table, with a look I couldn't quite read. I understood it now. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I drove to the west side, to a neighborhood called Franklinton, to a small coffee shop on Broad Street, where a woman named Eugenia Cross had her office above the dry cleaner next door. Eugenia had been Irene's closest friend since college. She was 72, fierce, tiny, and had worked as a financial investigator for the Ohio Department of Commerce for 30 years before she retired. She had also, I knew, made it her personal project in retirement to volunteer with a nonprofit that combated elder financial abuse. I had not seen her in almost a year. My own fault. Grief does that. You pull away from the people who remind you of what you lost. She opened the door before I even knocked, like she'd been expecting me, even though I'd called from the parking lot. "Harold Bowman," she said. "You look like you haven't slept." "I haven't. Come in and tell me everything." I sat across from her at a small table stacked with folders and told her everything. All of it. The hospital, Monica, the $60,000, Sheridan and Blount, Evan Blount, the letter to Joyce. What Monica had told Claudia. Eugenia didn't interrupt. She just listened, both hands folded in front of her, her eyes very still. When I finished, she said, "The letter to your property manager. Do you know when it was sent?" Joyce said she received it Monday, so it was sent before the accident. That hit me somewhere cold. "Yes, Harold." Eugenia leaned forward slightly. A conservatorship proceeding in Ohio requires a petitioner to demonstrate that the subject is incapacitated and unable to manage their own financial or personal affairs. The petitioner needs documentation. They need a pattern. The Thanksgiving story, that's documentation. The repeated loans that you forgot the terms of, that's documentation. If Monica has been building this case for months, she already has a file. The law firm letter to Joyce, that's them starting to inventory the estate, getting a number on what's there before they file. She paused. The accident may have been real, or it may have been a reason to get you into that hospital room for the ask. "You think my son crashed his car on purpose?" She looked at me evenly. "I think your son is desperate and not thinking clearly, and the woman he's married to is thinking very clearly on his behalf." I went home and I called Paul Greer again. I told him about Eugenia, about Evan Blount, about the timeline. Paul said he'd been digging too. He'd found something. Derek's consulting firm, Bowman Advisory Group, had been registered in Delaware and had taken on a silent investor 11 months ago. The investor was a holding company. The holding company, when traced back through 2 layers of LLC filings, connected to a man named Kurt Phelps, who had a federal civil judgment against him from 2019 for predatory lending and securities fraud. My son had borrowed money from a fraudster. "How much?" I asked. Paul was quiet. "The personal guarantee Derek signed, based on what I'm seeing, puts his exposure at somewhere between $400,000 and $600,000. The note comes due in 30 days. I sat down on my kitchen floor, not in a chair. On the floor, with my back against the cabinet, my son, my 40-year-old son, had borrowed $500,000 from a criminal and put his name on a guarantee he couldn't possibly meet. And when the note came due and Kurt Phelps came calling, the only asset, large enough to cover it, was mine. The rental properties alone were worth over $800,000. My investment account held another $220,000, my savings another $90,000. They needed control of my estate, not a loan. Control. The conservatorship was the mechanism. Evan Blount was the instrument. The Thanksgiving story, the repeated loans, the suggestion to Claudia that I was slipping, those were the bricks. They'd been laying them for months. Monica was the architect. I got up off the floor. I stood at my kitchen window and looked at the backyard. at the oak tree Irene had planted the year we moved in. It was bare now, mid-October, just dark branches against a gray sky. I thought about what I was going to do. I could confront them. I could call Derek and tell him I knew everything. But Derek would panic, and a panicking man with a $500,000 note, due in 30 days, and a wife who had been planning this for months would not behave rationally. He would accelerate the plan. No. I called Eugenia back. "Tell me how to set a trap," I said. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I've been waiting for you to say that. Paul Greer needs to be part of this. And we need to move the properties first." I spent the next 12 hours on the phone. Paul transferred both rental properties into an irrevocable trust I had actually set up 4 years earlier, at his suggestion, after Irene died. The properties were already protected. I had simply never told Derek or Monica that. The trust was iron. Monica's brother-in-law could file all the paperwork he wanted. He couldn't touch them. I also froze my investment account and my savings against any third-party transfer requests. Paul put a fraud alert on my credit. Eugenia contacted a colleague at the Ohio Attorney General's office, a woman she'd worked with for 15 years, and quietly opened an inquiry into Kurt Phelps and his connection to Derek's firm. Then I did what I had told Paul and Eugenia I would do. I called Derek. He picked up on the third ring, his voice careful. He knew I didn't call in the evenings. "Hey, Dad, everything okay?" "I've been thinking," I said. I made my voice sound tired. Older than I am. A little slow around the edges. About what Monica said at the hospital. About the money. A pause. "Yeah? I think I was too hard on you. I've been a little." I paused. Let the pause stretch. "I've been forgetting things lately, Derek. I don't know. Maybe Monica's right that I shouldn't be managing all of this on my own." The silence on the other end lasted exactly 2 seconds too long. "Dad," he said, and his voice had changed, softened into something practiced and warm. "We just want to help you. That's all we've ever wanted." "I know that," I said. "I know that now. I was being stubborn. Irene always said I was too stubborn." I let out a long, slow breath. "Maybe we should all sit down. You and Monica and Claudia. At my house. And talk about next steps." "Yeah," he said, and I could hear him trying to contain something. Relief. "Yeah, Dad, that's a really good idea. We can do that. Tomorrow, if you want." "Tomorrow's fine," I said. "I'll be here." I hung up and sat very still for a moment. They'd be there at 10 the next morning. Monica would bring the documents. Evan Blount might even come. They would sit at my kitchen table and explain, kindly and gently, that they were only trying to help me. I called Eugenia and told her what I'd done. She said, "Good. Paul and I will be in the driveway at 9:30. They arrived at exactly 10. Derek rang the bell, and I answered it in my old cardigan, the gray one with the fraying cuffs. I hadn't shaved. I moved a little slowly to the door. Monica was behind Derek with a smile and a leather folder. Claudia was behind Monica, her arms crossed slightly, uncomfortable. I had set the kitchen table with 4 chairs. There was coffee already made. Everything looked like the home of a man who was managing fine but perhaps a little tired of managing. Monica got to the folder within 6 minutes. She was good. She was warm and concerned, and she spoke about me in the third person to Claudia, even while I was sitting right there. "Dad might not realize how much goes into managing 2 properties. Dad deserves to have someone helping carry the load." She used the word help 8 times. I counted. She slid the folder open. The top document said Petition for Voluntary Conservatorship of Harold James Bowman. Claudia looked at it, and then at me. Something shifted in her face. "Monica," Claudia said carefully, "this isn't. You said we were coming to talk about financial planning options." "This is financial planning," Monica said, still smiling. "This is a conservatorship petition." "That's not the same thing." Derek put his hand on the table. "Dad, this is just to make things easier for everyone. You've been struggling, we've all seen it." "Name one thing," I said. They both stopped. "Name one thing I have struggled with. Specifically. With a date and a description." Monica opened her mouth. "The Thanksgiving. You changed the location and didn't tell me. You told Claudia you told me. You did not tell me." I looked at my daughter. "Call the restaurant where you had Thanksgiving dinner that year. Ask them when the reservation was changed." It was 2 days before. Monica called. Not me. Claudia was very still. "The loans," Derek said. "Dad, I've had to ask you twice. I have both transfer records." I have the text messages where you told me both loans were temporary. I have the dates. I folded my hands on the table. I've also had both rental properties professionally managed and audited quarterly. I have 5 years of records, filed and organized, in the cabinet in the hallway. The investment account is current. The savings account has not had an unexplained withdrawal in my entire adult life. I paused. I am not struggling, Derek. You are. The silence that followed was different from the silence I'd heard on the phone the night before. This one had weight. Monica's face was still composed, but her hands had shifted. She was pressing one thumbnail into the leather of the folder. Even if that's all true, she said, and her voice had dropped the warmth. Derek's situation is serious, Harold. You know that. You have the resources to help him and you're choosing not to. That's not a father. That's a Monica. The voice came from the hallway. She turned. Paul Greer was standing in the kitchen doorway. He was 69, silver-haired, and in 30 years of practicing law in Columbus, had developed a face that communicated exactly as much as he wanted it to. Right now, it communicated nothing pleasant. Behind him was Eugenia, in her good coat, her hands folded in front of her, and behind Eugenia, in a suit I didn't recognize, was a woman I'd never met. She had short hair and a badge clipped to her jacket, Ohio Attorney General's office. Monica shot to her feet. Derek went pale. Paul walked to the table and set his briefcase down. He didn't open it immediately. He just looked at Monica the way I imagine he had looked at a lot of people across a lot of tables over the years. My name is Paul Greer. I'm Harold's attorney of record. I've been his attorney of record for over 20 years. He glanced at the leather folder on the table. I've also reviewed the petition that Evan Blount drafted on behalf of Sheridan and Blount. I'll be honest with you. It's competent work, but it has a significant problem. Monica said, "You can't just." Both rental properties, Paul continued, are held in an irrevocable trust established in 2020. Harold is the sole trustee. Any conservatorship petition would have no mechanism to reach those assets. The trust is iron. Evan Blount knows this, or he would if he'd done a complete title search before filing. He opened his briefcase and slid a single page across the table. This is the trust instrument. Feel free to send it to him. Derek looked at Monica. You said, the investment account, Paul continued, has been frozen against third-party transfers since yesterday morning. The savings account, same. He looked at Derek. Your father is not confused, Derek. Your father has been watching this develop for 3 days and has done nothing but prepare, Derek. The woman from the AG's office stepped forward. My name is Linda Forsyth. I'm an investigator with the Financial Crimes Unit. I'm not here to arrest anyone today. I'm here to make sure you understand the situation clearly. She looked at Monica. We've opened an inquiry into Kurt Phelps and Bowman Advisory Group's debt structure, specifically the personal guarantee your husband signed on the Delaware LLC note. That inquiry will continue regardless of what happens in this room. Monica sat back down. It wasn't graceful. Derek put both hands flat on the table and stared at them. He looked like a man doing arithmetic that isn't coming out right. He's going to lose everything, Monica said, and for the first time her voice cracked. Not with sorrow, with fury. He borrowed that money because your business advice put him on a path that didn't work, and you won't. I gave him no business advice, I said. I gave him money and I gave him my name for his firm, Bowman Advisory Group. He used my name. I didn't know he'd taken on an investor. I didn't know about Kurt Phelps. I didn't know about the guarantee. I looked at my son. Did you think I did? Derek didn't answer. Did you know, I asked him, that Phelps had a federal fraud judgment against him? A long silence. No, Derek said finally. His voice was very small. I didn't know that until 3 months ago. What did you do when you found out? He rubbed his face with one hand. I told Monica. I looked at Monica. She didn't look back at me. She told you to fix it, I said. Before it came out. Before I found out. And this was the fix. Claudia made a sound I'd never heard from her before. It wasn't quite a word. She stood up from the table, slowly, and she looked at Monica with an expression I recognized from Irene. That look I had never understood. You told me Dad was forgetting things, Claudia said. You called me 3 times in the past 2 months. You told me you were worried about him. You said he'd forgotten my birthday. Her voice was very level. He sent me flowers and a card. I have the card. He'd been planning it for a week. Monica opened her mouth. Don't, Claudia said. Just that one word. She sat back down and didn't look at Monica again. Derek hadn't moved. He was still staring at his hands. Derek, I said. He looked up. I had thought about what I would say at this moment. I had rehearsed it in my head the night before, lying awake, trying to find the version that was honest without being cruel. But sitting there, looking at my son's face, all the rehearsed versions disappeared. 30 days, I said. Until Phelps calls the note. Derek nodded. I'm not going to let them put you in a position where you can't think straight. I'm not paying Kurt Phelps. I'm not going to let you sign away your future to a man with a federal fraud judgment. I looked at Paul. Tell him what we worked out last night. Paul cleared his throat. Bowman Advisory Group can be dissolved. The Delaware LLC wound down. The personal guarantee is challengeable on the grounds that Phelps's fraud history constituted material misrepresentation at the time the note was signed. There's a reasonable case. It will take a fight, but it's not a fight Derek has to take alone. He looked at Derek. Your father has agreed to fund the legal defense, not the debt, the defense. Derek stared at Paul for a moment, then at me. His voice broke slightly. He pressed his lips together. That's different from paying it off. Yes, I said. It is. Because paying it off would tell you that you can always come back and it'll get fixed. This is different. This means you have to fight. You have to stand up in front of a judge and explain what happened and why you didn't know. That's not comfortable. But it's honest. I paused. Your mother would have said the same thing. Claudia exhaled slowly beside me. Monica had not spoken in several minutes. She was looking at the leather folder as if it had failed her personally. Linda Forsyth from the AG's office was making quiet notes on a small pad. She hadn't come to arrest anyone. She had come, I realized, to witness. Whatever was said in this room, she would remember it. The petition, Monica said finally. Her voice was flat now, the performance fully dropped. If we don't pursue the conservatorship, Evan's firm doesn't get paid. He did a lot of work. Even Blount sent a certified letter to my property manager, claiming authority he didn't have, Paul said. Whether his firm gets paid is a conversation between you and him. It is not Harold's concern. Monica stood up. She picked up the leather folder. She looked at Derek and something passed between them that I couldn't read and didn't try to. Then she walked out of my kitchen, through the living room, and I heard the front door close quietly behind her. Not a slam. Which was somehow worse. Derek sat at my kitchen table for another 20 minutes after she left. He didn't say much. He drank the coffee that had been sitting in front of him, getting cold. At one point he put his face in his hands and didn't move for a while, and I didn't say anything during that either. There was nothing to say that wouldn't diminish it. Before he left, he stopped in the hallway. He looked at the framed photo on the wall, the one from Claudia's college graduation, the four of us. Me, Irene, Derek, Claudia. Irene is laughing at something out of frame. Derek is 22, squinting in the sun. I'm sorry, Dad, he said. I know you are. I didn't know what else to do. When I told Monica about Phelps, she took over. She said she had a plan. She said it would work. He shook his head. She said it would be easy because you'd been alone too long and you'd started to slip. I haven't slipped, I said. I know, he said. I knew. I let her. That was the most honest thing I'd heard from him in 2 years. I didn't want to let it pass without saying so. That's something to work with, I said. That right there. He nodded once. He didn't hug me. We've never been huggers. He put his hand briefly on my shoulder, and then he was gone. Eugenia and Paul stayed another hour. We sat at the kitchen table, and Eugenia made fresh coffee, and we talked through the next steps. The AG inquiry, the LLC dissolution, the legal challenge to the Phelps note, what it would take, and how long it would likely be. At one point Eugenia looked at me and said, You know, Irene used to worry about you. She said you trusted too much, that you'd give your shirt to the wrong person one day. She was right, I said. She was right about a lot of things. Eugenia smiled, small and sad and warm. She was also right that you were stubborn enough to survive it. That made me laugh. It was the first time I'd laughed in several days, and it came out a little rough, a little unpracticed. But it was real. Monica moved out of Derek's house 2 weeks later. The divorce papers were filed on a Thursday. Derek called me that evening, not to ask for anything, just to tell me. His voice was quieter than I'd heard it in years. Stripped of something. I didn't ask what. Some things you need to lose before you can figure out what to build in their place. The Phelps Note Challenge is still working its way through the courts. Paul says it may take the better part of a year. Derek got a job in November, a real one, with a salary and a benefits package at a mid-sized logistics company in Dublin, Ohio. He shows up every morning at 8 and he leaves when the day is done. He called me last week to tell me he'd paid his own electric bill for the first time in 3 years. He said it like he was embarrassed by how proud he was of it. I told him not to be. Claudia comes over on Sundays now. We eat lunch and watch whatever game is on and don't always talk very much, which is fine. She brought me a plant last month, something green and low maintenance, and set it on the kitchen windowsill near the oak tree. She didn't say anything about why. She didn't have to. I still manage both rental properties. I still walk 2 miles every morning. I still make my own coffee and balance my own accounts, and remember every birthday, every anniversary, every detail that matters. I am Harold Bowman, 67 years old. I design bridges. I know how weight works. I know that the things that are built right, built honest, built to carry their actual load, they don't collapse under pressure. They bend. Sometimes they crack in places. But they hold. If you are watching this and you have someone in your life who keeps finding reasons why you shouldn't be trusted with your own decisions, I want you to hear something. It usually doesn't start with cruelty. It starts with concern. We're just worried about you. We're just trying to help. You've been struggling lately, haven't you? It is quiet, and it is slow, and it is the kind of thing that works best when you are isolated, and when the people around you have been quietly told the same story enough times that they start to believe it. You are not confused. You are not a burden. Your life and your work and everything you built belong to you. Please tell me in the comments what state or city you're watching from. Your support means more than you know. And if this story stayed with you, give it a like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Take care of yourselves out there.